the teacher was in the teacher's lounge and she was complaining about a student who called her out in her class and corrected her. And she was a little bit upset about that. And the one teacher that was there, she said, "Who was that Kyle McKee?" And she said, "Yes, it was." And he said, "Well, you should have listened to him because he knows what he's talking about."
Well, Kyle was born on Valentine's Day, 1985. He was actually due 3 weeks almost prior in January. And I always laugh that that was probably the only time he was ever late in his life. He was a stickler about being on time. As he grew up, it became more pronounced, but it was one of those things that he would be a mess in his room, he would be a mess in everything else, but you had to be on time. Very comfortable in high places, always focused on being in the Army. He was a good kid, wasn't he?
Well, he was good. He and I, we had our moments. Because of our family in the military, he kind of went after military history. My career started in August of '62 as a airborne radar technician.
When I was younger, I wanted to go into the service and become a nurse. I wanted to go into the Navy. I was 17 and needed my parents to sign. They refused. So when Kyle came in and Steve and I sat in this room with him, with the recruiter, and said, "Are you sure this is what you want?" Knowing full well it was what he wanted. The kid was, every Halloween he was dressed in fatigues and he was never anything but a soldier through his entire life. From the time he could talk, he was going to be in the Army, and there was no changing that in him. I guess it kind of makes sense that he ended up in aviation and air assault and doing all that stuff. We signed the papers, which allowed him to become enlisted at that point as a 17-year-old. Because my parents didn't sign for me, I had to take a different tact. And I felt compelled to let him do what he thought was right for him. He got his diploma and he became a helicopter maintainer on Blackhawks. So when all his friends went to band camp and football camp and 4-H camp, when they did those types of things, he went to boot camp. And he graduated Soldier Leader of the Cycle at 17 years old. We were talking and he said to me, "Please, if anything ever happens to me, don't ever name a road after me." He said, "It's just going to be a reminder of what a loss it is." And then I don't know exactly what happened. He got to thinking about that sign and everything, and he said to me, "It's not a reminder of the loss." He said, "It's a reminder of the life." He had over 2,000 hours of active combat flight time. When you amass that many hours, you have been in more than one situation where you're in danger.
I remember being with him. We all had breakfast the day of his last flight. I was in the aircraft with him and flew part of the mission.
It was such, to me, a travesty, his final deployment, that it was peacekeeping. The number of times we said, "Kai, this is your last deployment."
They dropped me off back at the base, and I went on with my day. And then I was the first responder to go out and to look for them.
It was almost like we assumed the risk was gone. Well, the risk doesn't go away. It's still a huge helicopter that has tons of weight and it's controlled by human beings, and things can go wrong, and things went wrong. But it's just such a horrible irony.
I've been through a lot of events that are very similar. Crash crashes that are very similar, but the hole that was left in all of our soldiers after Kyle passed, it really touched a lot of people.
It's a very small circle of people that you become involved with that becomes family, that then goes away, and it makes a big impression on you. So
I served with Kyle in Egypt back in 2020 and first met him when we were in Kuwait, when we were stuck there because of COVID. One thing I can tell you about Kyle is he was fun to be around. He loved to have fun.
He was like the star of the show. He was the guy that all the older gentlemen enjoyed talking to, and he was very respectful and kind, and it made me so proud as his sister, and sort of like what a great guy to bring to a family gathering.
He had a shot at Ranger training. At this point, he had Jackson already, and he was gone a lot when he said, this is not the way to have a family.
Kyle was taken too soon, and there's an emptiness in our lives because he's no longer with us. He was an incredible husband, an amazing father. Our daughter Isla was born 12 days after he passed. She talks about her dad like she remembers him. Things can change in the blink of an eye, so tell your loved ones how much you love and care for them and hold them close.
I'll tell you what, at 35 years old, he lived. That man lived more life in 35 years, had more experiences, made more friends, and touched more people than I think most of us will if we live to be 100.
we were always surprised I was surprised anyways, at the number of people whose lives he touched in the military that we never knew about until after he was killed.
You know, it's the Kyle that we knew as our son, that was one person. And then there was the Kyle that was someone's friend, and that was another person. There was Kyle the father, and Kyle the husband, and Kyle the brother. And then there was this professional person. When he retired, I was going to get to know all those other Kyles.
You know, from a young age, I was exposed to him, like, doing his day-to-day job, working on helicopters and all the other stuff he did. I wanted to, like, kind of experience that or something similar to it. So I think that was one big factor into my joining.
We want them to be remembered and celebrated, but we really want you to know that they were people. They were people like you and I who just maybe did something more than the rest of us have done. That's who Kyle was.